Hey guys. Well, I had Thomas on, but YouTube cut us off. So he is working to get on, and just give me a minute to get him set up. He's not so good doing this by himself. Okay, now we're ready to go. I don't know why YouTube messes with us like this. It's not like we're giving out powerful information. Okay, Tess, give me your voice.
Okay, hi there, Betsy.
Okay, so we're the Betsy and Thomas Show. We're the American intelligence media, and many of you who have been with us for several years know us as Douglas and Tyler Gabriel, and it's our pleasure to continue our Betsy and Thomas Show, but we want to open this show up to our global community because what we face is something that the planet has never faced before, and it's this new world order that's been creeping on us ever since the days of Cecil Rhodes. And what we see as a result is just huge propaganda all over the world. And we've found with a lot of evidence, thanks to Michael McKibben and the researchers at the Americans for Innovation, that this propaganda is a tool that the globalists use to keep us in terror and fear, to keep us warring with each other. And that's how they pick over our bones and make themselves richer. But we're saying no more. Now, today's show, what you'll do is, if you're on the live stream, put your questions off to the side. The questions that will help Douglas look the most brilliant are the ones that I will pull out and ask him to answer. So of course, I'll do that for you. And then, if you missed this live stream, you can go to any of our blogs and you can subscribe to one or all of them, and you'll be sent a notice. We'll try to give you some warning. And also to download the American Intelligence Media app. It's available on Google Play. Thank you very much, Eric Schmidt, and Apple. And you can download those. Make sure to turn the notification button on so that when we send you the notice, you've got it. Now, Douglas, to get started, we're going to talk about the Bidens.
The Bidens.
Yeah, let's talk about the Bidens because that's what's in the news today. Give us your take. We've been talking about this for years, but the mainstream media is finally getting around to doing at least some of what we thought was their job.
Yes, well, this is exciting that we're doing the live stream. So thank you, Betsy, and the team for getting this together, and the conclave for allowing me to spout stuff out my mouth without having a little chance to edit it first. So we hope we don't get in too much trouble, but we might. So ask your questions, and I'll give you the off-the-cuff, without the conclave approval answer. But today we're going to talk a little bit about how far the left has gone. Now, when you say Joe Biden, you say friend of Ukraine. $4.7 billion, Joe Biden and Victoria Nuland and the Hildebeest, Hillary, and Obama gave to Ukraine so that they could stand against a duly elected president, first the Orange Revolution and then the Maidan Revolution, which was, of course, a George Soros-inspired revolution. But my point is that Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, got a position on one of the largest petroleum boards in Ukraine. Well, he has no experience in these areas. How did he get that? And at that time, that is when Obama put the sanctions on the pipeline going through Ukraine, through Russia, and through coming out of Kazakhstan. And this caused huge problems for Russia. Well, this is what the whole deal is about in Ukraine. Whether or not the president, I could name him, but it doesn't matter, but the two different ones who are no longer president there, they were fighting over who would get the concessions. Would they allow Russia to bring this pipeline through Ukraine? If they did, it would go into Europe, and it would be the answer to what was later the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, which we've told you a lot about, and which Angela Merkel still lies about to this very day, that she has a deal with Russia bringing in huge amounts of oil exclusively to Germany, which then she jacks up the price and sells it to the rest of the European Union. Well, Trump, of course, has squelched that and put a big dent in it. he did not pull off the sanctions that Obama put on Russia for their the allegations that the Russians meddled with our election, which they barely did. But of course, they always do a little bit. But no, that wasn't what was happening. So those sanctions had to stay on because Trump couldn't take them off. And now there have been sanctions placed all over the place in different countries that we don't even know anything about. And that's how Trump is actually getting the whole world to finally acknowledge America again. Now, Biden was given the highest honor by the three people who were hired by Paul Manafort, Rick Gates, and the Podesta brothers to represent these three oligarchs in Ukraine to make sure they got in power and stayed in power. And they are representatives of the Party of the Regions, the same party that supported Hitler in World War II. They are Nazis through and through. They're worse than Nazis. And there you have Joe Biden doing a Heil Hitler as he receives their highest honor. And literally a few weeks later, his son gets one of the best paid political positions in all of Ukraine. And we keep the sanctions on, Ukraine keeps the sanctions on Russia because we forced those sanctions upon Ukraine. That was part of the deal. So what you're seeing there is, that's truly fascism. Well, let's remember that the intelligence community's report, the Paradigm of Progress, said before the presidential election of 2016, that the left would have to go completely left, completely into socialism, or they would not win. And that is the reason they put up Bernie Sanders, an absolutely do-nothing communist, fascist, socialist, anything you want to call it, as long as it's not American. Bernie Sanders is the representative of how bad it can be that someone gets onto Capitol Hill who is in fact an anti-American. He has always been an anti-American. He's always been, literally, you could say, a communist, certainly putting forth communist ideas. But now we get to see that he's a socialist, and he's proud of being a socialist. And he's going so far to the left that he's become literally a communist. The only thing that he is promising is that he, as a dictator, will transform everything in America, from Wall Street to the stock market to student debt to medical insurance, everything. That is the earmark of a dictator. Well, we got to see with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is literally a trained and paid actress. And who was she trained by? The Young Turks. Now, if you don't know who the Young Turks are, you're talking about ancient, really old Italian fascism that is still around to this day. And the Young Turks, think about that for a second, the Young Turks. And then we know that the head of the Young Turks trained Chakrabarti, who trained AOC, and that then created the Green New Deal. And what is the Green New Deal? Think of it. She put forward the stupidest idea anyone could ever put forward, which basically controls every aspect of human life from the point on that it would have been voted in. Of course, it failed both in the House and the Senate. But the point is, the Green New Deal was a far left, fascist, dictatorial, communist. And yes, I'm going to now throw out the word communist because in a second, I'm going to demonstrate there's a lot of communists in America. But I would have to say that AOC and the radical Young Turk idea of the Green New Deal is in fact a complete rewriting of what we know as modern life. You would no longer have any freedoms because you would have to comply to so many aspects of the Green New Deal. And remember, most, if not all, of the Democratic candidates right now believed in the Green New Deal, though it failed miserably. So what does that say about them? But they want to go with a truncated version of it. That is nothing but fascism. Now, where did this get started? It wasn't McCarthyism that started communism in America. Communism in America came into our homes through Walmart, through Hillary and Bill Clinton inviting China into Arkansas and inviting them into, of course, Sam Walton, who I happen to know personally, when he only had 2 stores. It was nothing more than Clinton Chinese money being spirited into this country that created Walmart. And it became the largest corporation in the world, and Hillary had a paid position on their board. So everything you ever got from Walmart to this very moment, a part of it went to Hillary. So that's the communism I'm talking about. I'm talking about Hillary selling us out to the Russians with the tech cities, Skolkovo. We're talking about a complete sellout to the Chinese communism through Hillary, and through now we see Kissinger, we see Hillary and the crypto keys and all the companies that have moved there, including Eric Schmidt, who was there for a while and basically brought in their Dragonfly social credit system. Basically, what we're seeing is full-scale globalism that is so unconscious that it's going to slip into dictatorial communism just like that. And that's what would have happened had Broadcom got the contract for 5G.
I don't know if I like this setup, Thomas. It used to be when we were talking over the microphone, I could just tap you and let you know when I wanted to talk. But let's get to some of the questions that folks have. And as always, our audience is so keen about their ability to get to the details of what's happening. I saw one right here. I thought this was a very interesting. This is from Kate Ridgely. And she asked, are we making progress taking down the sex and human trafficking and pedos? Good question.
Yes, we're making fantastic progress because of, again, sanctions placed upon people who are caught in what have been, in the last 2 years, since Trump came into power, and since Ivanka started her efforts, and now they haven't stopped whatsoever. And we can see that what's happening in Hollywood with Harvey, good old Harvey, what's happening with Epstein, what's happening with Prince Andrew, all of these things are an indication that that is the direction that we're going. We're finally going to notice. I'm going to throw out some statistics and you're going to be shocked, but 800,000 people a year come up missing in America, and most of them, 65% of them, are female, and the majority of them come from social service placements. So the United States government doesn't even have a federal agency to look into these missing people. And unless there's a crime that the FBI acknowledges from the beginning, which they don't. And as a matter of fact, the people who report on these missing children, and basically, let's call this what it is. This is human trafficking, sex trafficking. This is human slavery. And it is in America unstopped. It is unchecked. It is not even acknowledged. We are some of the first people 2.5 years ago to come out and say, it isn't about one incident of pedophilia. It isn't about one sweep that pulls 100 people off the internet that were involved in pedophilia. Oh, no, no, no. This is about pedophilia on a massive level. This is about human sex slavery on a massive level. We've indicated where those streams are going. Atlanta, California, 2 largest places in America where these people are being stolen and taken out of. Where's the #1 hit zone where they actually target and steal more people? Washington, D.C. It always has been. We've indicated the original groups that worked out of Washington, D.C. and took most of those people to Atlanta and flew out in unmarked planes. And these are literally slaves. And where are they going to? They're going to, I'm sorry to have to say it, but they're going to places where women have no rights. Every country that has how to say this in a nice way, that has a government that is ruled by imams, those are where the women went. We see this with ISIS. We see it with, in Africa, we see it with all the slaves that they steal, the women that they steal so that they could propagate their own ideas with their own children from slaves that they've captured. Now, what has Trump done about this? A huge amount has been done about it. First off, the #1 place where we are seeing this is the southern border. We have said, and we've given the statistics, and now the statistics have gone up to the point where 65%, they are saying, of every single girl who crosses our southern border has been raped repeatedly. It is a sin that we say that we have open borders, because all you do is create human trafficking. All you do is get everyone who's moving towards that border raped. So we're seeing it on the southern border. We're seeing it come out with Epstein. We're seeing it come out with Hollywood. We're seeing it all over the place. And with the Me Too, The fact that women are finally coming forward and they are not being shamed for telling the truth that they have been sexually abused by really the elite and the power figures. And where is it worst? Mainstream media. Look at all the people who have been kicked out. Hundreds of CEOs, and many of them mainstream media CEOs. Because why? They thought that they could act with impunity. And they believe that in Hollywood, you can rape children because that's just part of what it takes for the casting couch.
Now, Thomas, a lot of people are getting very, very upset that we don't see anything happening. Now, you and I talk about this a lot, that we see things on the surface that seem to be results of what's going on deep where we can't see it. But citizens, we have to remember that our media is not our media. They're our enemy. So they're never going to report and give us the accurate story of what's going on. Even if Trump does something good, they're not going to report it to us. So we're out here, we're on our own. Citizens around the world are banding together to find truth. That's what we want. We are addicted to truth. But Thomas, I'm going to pull up a question here. And it's coming here. It is. This citizen is one who is asking a question that so many are. They want to know, when are we going to see something like military tribunals or some big players that are being indicted by the Department of Justice? And is the Department of Justice going to come through with anything other than this low-hanging fruit like lack of candor and perjury?
First off, Michael Horowitz's investigation has to end. And as we told you, he's not going to indict anybody. He's going to recommend to the Department of Justice so that they can horse around and try to slow walk it to death. When that ends, and when we start to see, you won't see anything happen until you start to see unredacted documents. The unredacted documents, even if they go to Congress, could mean absolutely nothing. So until we start to see indictments, yes, you're right, then we are all going to be very frustrated. But to give you a little bit of hope, not, I think the term you used the other day, Betsy, was hopium, like opium and hope together. No, we're not going to give you that. We're going to give you the frank reality. The frank reality is Trump is still fighting a counterintelligence attack against him and his office. He basically has the whole world that was part of it. Literally, all the globalists, and that means all the SES members, the Senior Executive Service members. It means both parties, the Uniparty. It means the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that controls the Uniparty. It means every billionaire in America that was using cheap, illegal alien labor. It means everyone who was being corrupt. It means everyone who was breaking the rule of law. That means most of the politicians in Washington, D.C., certainly all of the Chicago crime gang that came with Obama out of Chicago that went to Washington, D.C. They're still doing their thing. Now, what you will see is what we told you from the beginning. Trump is treating this with a counterintelligence operation. And that is the reason he is now trying to appoint the previous head of the National Counterterrorism Unit as the head of his National Security Council, National Security Advisor. Now, the reason for that is because it's always been that. He knew it from the beginning. He refused to take intelligence reports from the intelligence community because he knew that they were all SES hangovers and people who were maintaining the status quo. And that is really a group that is part of the resistance. So he has been fighting tooth and fang, but he's been using, as we've said again and again, the U.S. Treasury Department Office of Intelligence and Analysis and the U.S. Marshals to put sanctions on people, even Americans. But you can see many things if you are looking closely. The Global Engagement Center has been ended. The Department of Defense no longer has a clause in the National Defense Authorization Act allowing propaganda of Americans. It's now illegal, as it was before. You get to see the threats of Trump against the fake news until they believe the threats and they're going nuts.
Wait. Are you saying that it's illegal now to propagandize Americans?
Yes.
Okay, but before it was, because that's how we got started. We were very upset about the false flags and what was going on with the propaganda, and that's why we're sitting here today. But you see, Thomas, that's not quite true because the propaganda still exists. If you look at any of the corporate media, all that they're doing is propaganda. When they don't tell you the truth, when they don't talk to you about the overthrow attempt the Queen, the Privy Council, and the Pilgrim Society were doing on Donald Trump to overthrow the President of the United States, when they don't go that far with truth, they are still propagandizing us. So what are we going to do about that?
That is a conspiracy, and that should be treated with a racketeering charge against Avid, ISIS Management, the U.S. Digital Service, Eric Schmidt's donation of the Digital News Agency, the $1.5 billion that was given to social media by George Soros and the United Council. We simply have to go back to the places where they have been paid off and show that there was racketeering, and that behind the scenes there was a conspiracy to promote falsehood. There are laws, very few of them, that control broadcasting. And one of the things you cannot do is have a conspiracy of falsehood. Well, that's what we have now. So just like the social media is now begging to be taken over by the government, which is really just a trick, we shouldn't do that. Soon the fake media, the entire mainstream media, will be doing the same thing, because we're going to see that the charges and the fines by the federal government against them are so huge that they will simply have to collapse. And that's okay. That's what should happen. And they know that, but what they want to do is they want to break themselves up into, multiples so that they can get the same amount of money from each one of those individuals. So just like Standard Oil broke up into the Seven Sisters, and the Seven Sisters made the same amount of money as Standard Oil immediately. Same thing happened with Google to Alphabet. Same thing happened with all of these Silicon Valley cyber lords who are getting out of their original companies because they were really DARPA projects. They were military projects, which they were just the front men for, and they know nothing. Just listen to them. Very few of those Silicon Valley cardboard cutouts know anything. Listen to what they have to say. That's all you have to do. So, is anything happening? Yes, a lot is happening. And can we stop them? Yes, we can stop them. Are there laws that say that this cannot happen? Yes, there are. But we have lived in a state of lawlessness since George H.W. Bush, the ex-head of the CIA, and the head of the rogue CIA, came to power in the White House. And since then, basically, there's been complete lawlessness in Washington, D.C. And you've seen very, very few of the elites ever get prosecuted, indicted, prosecuted. And even if they do, like James Wolfe, one of the worst espionage cases in U.S. history, spent 2 months in jail for leaking to Alvy Watkins, who was writing in many different news sources, news agencies. All, for instance, the FISA warrants that we're waiting on to be unredacted so that we can see them, so that we can see the nonsense that Comey signed and all the other people who signed them. Well, those were already released by James Wolfe. He's already done his time, and he's out, and he's still working for the government. So those are setups. So until Michael Horowitz is done with his report, until William Barr has really stood back and seen how to go after these criminals, we pointed out there are 28 separate crimes of treason that Comey committed that we know of, and now we've added a few others because of some that have come up that we didn't even know about, like placing FBI agents on the National Security Council of Trump so that they could report back to the FBI. Of course, that's completely crazy. It's illegal and it's treasonous. So we're going to have to stand back and give them some time. It takes years. Let's remember Eric Holder, Fast and Furious. We still have those weapons killing our people on the southern border and massacring people in Mexico. But Eric Holder played the game of the statute of limitation until it was 7 years afterwards that finally we got the evidence coming forward. That's the way it works in DC. So don't be surprised it takes a long time. And don't be surprised that it takes Trump a long time, because he's fighting so many battles on so many levels. First issue for him, economics. He's working through the U.S. Treasury Department. Sanctions are working. Tariffs are working. Tax cuts are working. All of the incentives that he's created are working, and that we see that in historic numbers in terms of the positive outcomes of Trump's administration. So give it some time. As we've said from the beginning, only in his second term will we get to see how radical he's going to be.
Okay, so folks want to know why we can stay so optimistic. And I always answer them by saying, well, we have a cosmology. I mean, when we actually started this process, we were writing books that give us a big view of the world in which we live. And then we found that a lot of people couldn't grasp it because, well, now that we find out they have been brainwashed, they can't even begin to think about these concepts because they're so outside of their imagination. So what we like to say is that we have a cosmology. And we also feel that we see the light at the end of the tunnel. And we keep our vision on that light very focused. Now, in the internet space, there's a lot of stuff that's happening. You know, you will see side stories that are all very interesting. I find them interesting, but we can't get distracted. We have to keep our vision, our focus, our worldwide focus right now should be to protect your nations from the globalists, protect your borders, protect your culture and your language. I know I'm sounding like savage, but it's true. That's your number one job as a patriot. And once we lock up this, then we will be able to revisit what it means to live in the world in peace with so many other different people. But until then, patriots, you're on the ground. Your job in the great information war is to red pill anyone you can. And that doesn't mean it has to be extreme. For example, in America, our goal is to get everyone we can to vote for Trump in 2020. Now, not everybody has to know the level of detail of the corruption in the swamp, but can you reach out and help someone understand why they want to be a MAGA CAG supporter in 2020? And maybe in your country, your goal is something else. Maybe in Italy, your goal is to get Matteo Salvini back on the ticket, running again, running your country. But everyone needs to be out there protecting their borders. And that's what we can all do together as a community. And Thomas, what do you have to say about that?
Well, you know me, I always have a lot to say. And what I had to say is the reason that we are positive is just because of what you said. If you have a cosmology, you know what the future is. Not exactly, but you have a very good idea of the way that human beings are going to react to things. And that's the reason that so far, for 2.5, 3 years, we have made hundreds of predictions and every one of them has come true. Why? Because they really weren't predictions. They were simply following the paths of evil and following the paths of good. Now, at our time in history, we are not supposed to conquer evil. I am not going out to conquer evil single-handedly. No way. It's not going to happen. But what I can do is I can use consciousness. And that's what Betsy and I are doing, and the whole conclave, and Michael McKibben, and all these people we work with. It's consciousness. So we keep saying, bring to light the evil. Why? Because in the light, the evil is going to die. It will die on its own. And so we also know that it only takes 48 people who are conscious and who have a cosmology and who have faith that the future really does have something positive to hold for us, and yet objectively can look at evil and see it for exactly what it is, call it out for what it is, and somehow through consciousness you can be immune to that evil.
But more important than just calling out evil in a general way is naming it. Calling out the events that have happened in history that have brought us to this point. And in our research, we were incredibly surprised to find that spying, which are our intelligence agencies, and journalism actually were born from the same evil womb. Speak to that, please.
Well, yes, and also I'm going to say that for us, Betsy, because of our experience in life, we are able to do what Rudolf Steiner told people who were developing their consciousness into a more refined consciousness to do, and that is to enter into the belly of the dragon. The dragon is materialism, and it is evil, and it basically makes us into robotic automatons with no freedom And so we are fighting that, and we are doing everything we can, but we have entered into the belly of the dragon as a poison to enter into the stomach. But to do so, you must truly know the dragon. You must truly face it head on. You must be impervious to its fire, and you must be willing to go into its darkness, into its belly, and to take with you, as Betsy often calls it, the red pill, to wake up the dragon itself. But the deal is, if you can wake up human beings, all of a sudden, they will no longer be entranced. I used to walk into a room in the old days when television had hypnotized everyone, and I would see that when someone was being completely hypnotized, I would go in, turn the TV off, which would really make them very, very upset. They'd want to kill me. And then I'd clap my hands 3 times, and I'd say, here's a $100 bill for anyone who can tell me what it is you're watching on this friggin' TV. And if you can't tell me, I'm going to take the TV and I'm going to go throw it away. And they all said, they were thrilled. They wanted the $100. Not a one of them, I'd say, seldom ever did anyone even know what they were watching. Why? Because you're hypnotized. So there's an evil out there that is pervading the world that we have to face. And that's the reason we do our work. That's the reason for our intelligence reports. And besides that, Betsy, I think I've forgotten the question. So you're going to have to bring me back out of the weeds and back onto the question of the person who asked you that.
Well, it's just that, why people say that we're hopium, but we're not. We have a plan. We see where the end is. We see what we not have to knock out, because this is an information war. Now, we called it an information war. We called it the Great Information War a while back, before we really saw how deep it is truly an information war. And what happened back at the turn of the century, a group of evil men got together under the leadership of Cecil Rhodes and Alfred Milner. And they said, let's figure out a way to conquer the world and take over the world. So they came up with this 200-year plan. And we have it documented. We have the evidence that this actually happened in history. And this was largely run by the British. And so we have to take a pause and go, whoa, the British? I mean, my whole life, we've been told that the British are our friends. We never even questioned our relationship with the Brits. So to be able to stand up and say, I don't think we won the American Revolution. And wow, I think the British are not our friends. That's a big, bold statement, and we don't make it lightly. And we don't mean to disparage the good men and women, the patriot brothers and sisters that we have on the ground in the United Kingdom fighting for their freedom and liberty. But now at this point in history, thanks to the internet and its scalability, thanks to Michael McKibben and Leader Technologies, we are able to take this and weaponize it against the very people that would enslave us. And it is your duty, patriots, to figure out a way to educate and enlighten those around you, because we're all citizen warriors. Maybe your expertise is making memes, which is great, because a meme can open up passages and portals in the brain for someone who is so entrenched in their brainwashing to kind of loosen them and open them up. And Thomas is also right when he says that it is consciousness, because if each one of us can change within ourselves, then the world around us changes, and then that world changes. And before you know it, we've gradually exited the darkness into the light. And it's not airy-fairy. There is a path to this.
Oh, absolutely. And you nailed it on the head. If you look at the Pilgrim Society, founded in 1902 by Harry Britton, funny that his name is Britton, in Britain, this society also pervades America. And from its inception in 1902, it has pervaded every single aspect of high-level government, high-level corporate interests, any type of banking interest in America, and basically anywhere where money flowed. Pilgrim Society members who basically take an allegiance to the monarchy of England, which is just utterly extraordinary that in today's age, anyone could believe in a monarch. I mean, really, there's no such thing as a monarch being divinely inspired. And often those monarchs are simply
divinely inspired. We know that this group over there in London, they're pedophiles. The Queen is protecting pedophiles. How does that have anything to do with divine inspiration?
The parliament itself has taken vote after vote on lowering the age of consent for children for sex. Some of the suggestions have been as low as 6 years old. Right now, the one they're kicking around is 9 years old. 12 isn't good enough for them. They want 9-year-old. How can a 9-year-old give consent for sex? That shows you that these people who can come up with thoughts like this are pure evil. And of course, if you're an imperialist, or I'm going to have to say this very, not very nicely, but if you are part of one group or the other that participates in ethnocentrism, in other words, believing your group is the right group, and whether you are Hitler, National Socialist, don't forget, Bernie, Hitler was a National Socialist. That's what you are. You're a socialist, and you're worse than a National Socialist. You are a senseless socialist. But anyway, what we need to remember is that the Brits, from the beginning in 1902, set out to say that they were a Anglo-Saxon hegemony. In other words, they wished to take over the world with the people who spoke English and or were white, because they were white supremacists. And then Hitler, what did he want? He wanted the Aryans to take over the world, Aryan hegemony, so that only someone that they had classified as an Aryan could actually participate in this, and only they would be the elite. What's that sound like? That would be exactly the same thing as the Jesuits, as the Venetian bankers, as Russian oligarchs, as Chinese communism. Being a member of the Chinese Communist Committee is the same thing as following the model given by the Venetian bankers and the Doge that was surrounded by then a group of corporate interests. Well, that's the same thing going on in Russia. So what we have is the plan in Britain was to simply carry on the institutions that have been going on for a long time, the Catholic Church, the Templars, the Hospitallers, the Knights of Malta, and basically simply do what they were doing, which is have insider groups that fleece countries, take their taxes, take their wealth, take their resources, and put it in offshore accounts away from that country. In other words, people who are anti-British are really the ones controlling Britain. And they are not even British, and they are not Anglo-Saxon. They are German, or they are Dutch, or mixes between. And what we see here is just the grossest form in the Pilgrim Society of piratism. This is the same type of pirate activity that the British East India Company was participating in for hundreds of years and perfecting it. And that then was folded into what we're talking about, which is the roots of fake news, which were based in intelligence gathering and spying. And we need to cut that root of fake news off. As Trump has said, it's our number one enemy in America. We need to cut it off at the root. Fake news needs to be pulled out by the roots, and we need to look at it and see what it is and see what it was created for. And it was created as a system of propaganda to keep the banksters in place and corporations in power.
Yes. Okay. So let's wrap up, but I want to look at what happened on Capitol Hill this week with Mark Zuckerberg, or we call him Mark of the Zuckerbeast. No, is that, Mark of the Zuckerbeast. And he is pictured there. Trump tweeted it in the Oval Office or somewhere in the White House where the two of them met. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall. If you were a fly on the wall, Thomas, what do you think happened in that meeting? Oh, and let me just say, I am really not too keen about this Josh Hawley, Senator Josh Hawley. Okay, 39 years old, went to Stanford, spent a year in London. I want to know what that year in London was. His bio says he was off teaching, but you know, all my little lights are going off because you've got Tavistock there, you've got the Crown, you've got what's that other one?
What do you mean, Wellington House? Or
you've got all of this indoctrination for the globalist. So we're really a Rhodes Scholar is the word I'm looking for. So you've got that year where he could have easily been indoctrinated to the globalists. And then he comes over here. He's back here and he's saying, I've got this bill. I'm going to pass this bill and we're going to take care of social media. And it is the wishy-washiest pussy bill I've seen, to be honest with you. And you come in and saying, asking Mark if he'll just sell off WhatsApp or another one, Instagram. That's not a solution. And it is not a solution to break up these media, Google, YouTube, Facebook, all of them. They are criminals. They stole the technology to run their platform. And who was it? It was the Department of Defense, Office of Net Assessment. Yes, people, it was the United States government that stole Michael McKibben's technology. Then they took it with the IBM Eclipse Foundation, and they made sure that everybody in Silicon Valley got it for free. Now, what that's like is, when you're setting up your computer and you want to have some software, you pay a license fee because then the person who developed that gets a part of it. And everything is built on these licensing fees. Well, the original license fee has never been paid. The original inventor has never been acknowledged. And the United States government has a big friggin' bill they need to pay Leader Technologies. So long before Josh Hawley does anything with the bill, why isn't he looking at disgorging them and facing the music that their technology was originally stolen?
So true, Betsy. We must disgorge them. We do not charge them with monopolies. They are a monopoly. We don't charge them with antitrust. We gave them our trust. I mean, look at Jeff Bezos. First off, he's not Jeff Bezos, and he was trained by the lady, the single individual who wrote the Paris Climate Accord, which is all lies. He is, of course, not even charged U.S. postal rates. Still, to this moment, he is given fantastic support by the government. This is true with all of the social media. This is true with everyone who stole the technology through the IBM Eclipse Foundation. So we saw that Trump was going to invite these bigwigs after he invited the people who had been basically squelched on the internet, and particularly conservatives, to the Oval Office. And then he said he was going to do something about it. There was some rumors of an executive order that was going to be written. And then you start to see certain individuals pop up, like Mark of the Zuckerbeast, appearing in the White House Oval Office. What was going on there? Very simple. Trump shook his hand and said, I don't believe you've ever written a line of code. What can you tell me about the IBM Eclipse Foundation? Demonstrate that I'm incorrect. Zuckerberg didn't know what to say. And that was probably the end of the conversation. At which point Trump would have known that Zuckerberg needed to be fired, because Zuckerberg has never done a single thing ever for Facebook. He hasn't written any code.
He doesn't know how to code. And I'll tell you something. Okay, get that cough out. I'm muting you. Get that cough out. And so anyway, he doesn't write code. And so that's why I put on the CAT report, hey, Mark, is it time for you to learn how to code? Because basically, he's a fraud. He's a phony. And so is Facebook. DARPA wanted to spy on all Americans, wanted to collect information on all of us. Now, they knew full well that we weren't going to sign up with a site called DARPA Wants to See You. So they put some eye candy on it, and they call it Facebook and Google and Instagram and made it all popping with color. And we went in and we did it. But all along, it was the government getting your personal information so that they could surveil on us. And citizens around the world, we've had enough. We've had enough, Thomas.
I totally agree. And we have to do something. And basically what we have to do is pull it out by the roots. And all we have to say to the Silicon Valley cyber lords is, please show us your original code. And they're going to say, this is the code that the IBM Eclipse Foundation gave us. And you can say then to them, this isn't the original code.
Okay, so then you would go to James P. Chandler, or what's that, George Freeze? Did I get that name right? George Freeze?
Freeze, yeah.
And who else? Andrew Marshall, who's now dead. All these people that sit on the Highlands Forum group that ran this IBM Eclipse Foundation. Eclipse, why? Because they wanted to eclipse all of humanity. And that's not just Thomas and Betsy here in America. This is Helen, you over there in New Zealand. It's our friends in the Philippines. It's all over the world. literally think that they're going to take over the world and watch us and control us through this very network that we're using.
And they thought that China was going to take over Silicon Valley because why? China has moved in and spent more money there than any other country, including America. Also in Hollywood, also all over. And for all startups, China is there. China says it's going to lead us because why? Eric Schmidt went over and gave everything that Google had, that Alphabet had, that Boston Dynamics had, and basically created a new Eclipse, IBM Eclipse Foundation. It is ran by IBM. It's ran out of China, and it's called Open Power. And what it is it's just a new version of this. And China said, if you are going to do any business with us, you must do it on this new system. Well, the new system has every backdoor built into it you can imagine, every surveillance, every targeting device, everything. And this was done with Eric Schmidt's help. Now, that's what was supposed to happen. That's not what's going to happen. And 5G was supposed to take over the world, and that's the reason China was putting it in everywhere as fast as they possibly could, and was 1 inch away from putting it here in America through Broadcom, joining with Qualcomm, but Trump stopped them, stopped the CFIUS committee at the last second. We were 1 inch away from the Chinese taking over America.
And not just that, when you put these 5G systems that they're describing into an urban setting and those towers are close together, you're literally talking about microwaving the urban area. I mean, we're talking about Holocaust ovens taken to a whole nother degree. We're talking about eugenics. We're talking about genocide. You don't think the Chinese were coming over here to do something good. And now I also want to talk a little before we go. I know people are on the side chat saying don't go yet. They have some more questions. Let's talk about Five Eyes. Five Eyes is not America's friend. Five Eyes is the enemy, and we were tricked into that arrangement. Please expand on that, Thomas.
In 1946, I believe it was, when the Ultra Group was created, that was really the beginning of Five Eyes, where there were secret agreements made between Britain and America that at this moment cannot be abnegated because they go back so far that everyone believes that that's the only system that we have. It is not. Five Eyes just meant that the United Kingdom, so Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, could spy on America using all of our intelligence. But that shouldn't surprise people. The #1 corporate intelligence group is Lockheed. Lockheed is owned by who? The Queen. The Queen owns the golden share. And then Lockheed has its L3 group. L3 was the largest corporate intelligence in the world. It just went back because we and others pointed that out. So Lockheed all of a sudden said, well, we're not going to get out. We're getting out of the business of intelligence. So they gave it over. L3 was simply sent over to Leidos, which is the In-Q-Tel, which is the CIA's form of DARPA. And so we have been seeing from the beginning that the British have their tentacles into every aspect of American government, including intelligence, including crypto keys, including uranium. There's only one actual major uranium enrichment plant in America, and it's owned by who? The Queen, Germans, and the Dutch. How is this even possible? How could we give away uranium enrichment to the British? Oh, no. For the years before that, we gave it completely to the Russians. The Russians came into our country, and they had a group here called Fusion that was basically taking, this is unbelievable, but we've talked about it a lot, called from megatons to megawatts. They took Russian nuclear missiles, downgraded the uranium, brought it to America, upgraded it, enriched it, and our facilities, which we now have to pay billions of dollars to clean up those facilities, and then sold it back to us in our nuclear facilities at a jacked up price. And now we know that for the last 10 years, Andrew McCabe and John and Robert Mueller, and also Comey was complicit in this, Uranium One took over 27% of our uranium reserves and allowed a Russian company, 10M, which is a division of 10X, which is a division of basically the Putin's, it is literally Putin's nuclear group themselves that controls the Kazakhstan uranium, which we're talking about here. But anyway, they came in, the Russians, and they controlled this for 10 years for megatons and megawatts. They controlled it for another 10 years, completely hidden, and uranium won. The people involved in that, Frank Juster paid $145 million through some companies that he was involved in, which are really Russian companies, directly to Hillary while she was the Secretary of State, because she's the one who made sure that this got approved. So we are dealing with, again, going back to my original remarks, communism on the worst level that we've ever seen. We're also dealing with something very peculiar, and that's that we have, as a society, given over to the Silicon Valley cyber lords the same respect and allegiance that in the ancient times we would give to a priest king, and let them control the caste systems, let them control everything, let them control what jobs we have, let them control everything. Well, that's what we've done, whether we know it or not. We have made the Silicon Valley cyber lords into our new mechanical priest kings. And we believe that anything they lead us towards that says that artificial intelligence is going to become more of a reality in our life is a good thing. We believe everything they tell us. We believe every new technology is good for us. That has come to a screeching halt because of the moratoriums that are being placed on 5G, because of what has been happening with countries basically telling people like Apple and Google and all these different companies, you have to pay your taxes, and putting fines on them for spying on human beings, for targeting them, surveilling, targeting, attacking, and manipulating them. We now know that Robert Epstein says, Dr. Robert Epstein, 25 million votes were manipulated through the algorithms of Google alone in the 2016 election. This is the age we're at, but I still will tell you, consciousness can conquer all of this, because when it comes down to it, the really evil people, it's not that big a group of people. If you took a few thousand people and locked them up, you'd end all offshore accounts. You'd end all, we could end 95% of offshore accounts that are stealing taxes from every nation on the face of the earth. We could end the manipulation of central banks, because we could simply charge certain people for not paying taxes. And once they're in jail, they can't run their businesses the way they did before. So we really don't have to take down all the systems that we've built up over time. We just need to completely rebuild them. We need to dismantle them, disassemble them, and rebuild them based upon human intelligence, and putting the human in the concern of every single question instead of machines. Because unfortunately, machines have replaced human intelligence. And this is a descent of human evolution instead of an ascent of human evolution. You got to ask yourself the question: transhumanism. Trans to what?
Okay.
What are we transforming into?
Hold it, because that's a topic that could take you another hour.
Yes.
Transhumanism, and I want to say we've got that coming. So, folks, we've reached a space, so to speak, in this great information war that we felt it's more important now to start connecting our worldwide community together on formats like this. Now, we're doing the live streaming on our backup channel where we don't have a lot of subscribers. Actually, it's probably some of our core folks that have been following us. And we are doing it here because we want good questions and we want good interaction. Then once we're finished here, we'll save a copy of this and put it on our main site. It won't be live streamed there, but we'll be able to answer your questions and stuff along the way in the comment boxes. If you want to participate in these live streams, then you'll need to come over to our secondary site and subscribe. And remember that I'm going to be sending out notifications on our blog and also our AIM app. Make sure to turn the notification button on if you want to receive those notifications. Thomas, thank you so much for being here today. I'll wrap up now on transhumanism. I'll let you finish out on that. And the reason is next week, you're going to be going to a very special place. We have a videographer coming, so it won't be Betsy's, thing behind the scenes that's all choppy. We're going to have a videographer videotape a lecture that you're going to be giving on transhumanism, which is really the next big topic that we need to look at. So in closing, tell us what folks will be hearing in that lecture.
Well, Betsy, that's very good. Basically, it's going to be highlighting the battle between human intelligence, human thinking, and machine intelligence or artificial intelligence. And this is a battle really between what we call mechanical occultism and spiritual science. Now, mechanical occultism simply means that you are occulted by the machines that you use. In other words, the machines start to do your thinking for you, so you start to atrophy and no longer think. The machines start to tell you that all these different social medias are where your friends are. Those aren't real people. You may never meet them in your life, and that will turn your heart cold. And that's the reason people are so cold on the internet, especially on Facebook, where you can just be as cruel as you want to be. And then there's also the fact that we're becoming so lazy that literally children are not even going to be taught how to write cursive or to handwrite anymore. They don't do math, they use calculators, and all knowledge, they don't have to remember a thing. They can simply look it up on one of their devices, and so memory is going to the wayside. And basically, history is being rewritten by whoever can get the most hits on the internet. That's the historical version you're going to see. And you're going to believe that because it's going to be reiterated, because the internet will give you only what it is that you like and that is like you. So transhumanism, you got to ask the question, and this is the bottom line. What are you transforming into? Are you becoming an angel, or are you going to become a machine? And that really is a serious question, because now if you're going to start to use wetworks and put neural networks in the brain, and you start to wirelessly be able to communicate with your computer, which is happening at this moment as we speak, and all of these innovations are going forward, and no one has any morality to ask any questions about whether or not this technology is going to harm human beings. For instance, everyone wants to say to the Federal Communications Commission, stop 5G. Well, they're stupid. They don't have any doctors. You know what their standard is? Their standard is if it doesn't blister your skin, they don't care. Well, here's the reality. Microwave cooks you from the inside out, so it's not going to blister your skin first. It's going to blister all your internal organs. And that's what's going on. Billions and billions of signals are going through your body as we speak, if you're in America, for sure, and most places in the world. So do we really need to enhance that? 5G is being enhanced so that they can turn humans into wetwork humans, into cyborgs, and so that robots can work, and so that driverless cars can work, and so that they have what is basically the military's version called full spectrum battlefield, and that is done through satellites. So you see 17,000 satellites have been approved to go into space to beam down 5G. 300,000 antennas have been approved in America to be put up, many of them inches from your windows in your homes. This is an assault on the human being. This is an extinction event, because 5G, even if it's in the gigahertz range of 5 to 20, which is what they tend to want to use it in, goes up to 200. So these are milliwaves, or what I like to call the millimeter waves or milliwaves. When they have beamforming technology, they go to 200 gigahertz. In other words, it fries your brain. This is already well known, and all the research is conclusive. But none of the tech companies have done any research. And when asked if they've done any, they just shake their head and say, no, we haven't done any. But we quickly need to install it all. So the time has come for us to develop the morality to question whether technological inventions should go forward. That is a question where we have to decide whether we're going to become humans who become angels, or humans who become machines.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and let's get together again. We need to meet more often like this.
Thank you, Betsy.